Hey there. Thanks for jumping in. This is Taylor Magnus with Socket Consulting. With this most recent quarterly release pushed out this previous Friday, as always, we wanted to get out a quick video just surrounding some of our favorite benefits and features that we saw pushed out that we think would most benefit our customers. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So as always, just a quick reminder, if you ever want to jump in and read the release notes and details, you can find those here on the homepage. And those go in depth as far as the documentation goes. Digging into all those things that have changed, as well as permissions and requirements surrounding those things. Now, as far as what I'll touch on today, first we'll look at a few new features and updates that are a little more broad, and then we'll jump into some of our construction specific updates. Now, for our first update, I wanted to touch on. So this applies both to order entry as well as purchasing, and that's the ability to more easily trace and drill into our originating documents. So previously, when we wanted to find and review originating source documents from a downstream document, and that could be several steps down, we would need to drill back through our flow one document at a time. And so with this latest release, as we can see here, we get access to a hyperlink directly on whichever document it is that we're sitting at, which will bring us directly back to the originating document. No permissions or configuration required. And we immediately, kind of ease that entire process of researching and managing transactions. Now, for the next feature, while simple, is one us accountants can certainly appreciate. With this latest release, the numbering sequence for our GL journal entries can now include our fiscal year in a rollover prefix and will automatically roll for the next fiscal year. So this will be helpful for companies needing to meet legal requirements in certain countries, but will also make managing and referencing our journal entries simpler and easier throughout the year as we eliminate the need to create a new document sequence each time we enter a new fiscal year. Now, while I don't have this active in my demo environment, just quickly pop into the release notes here. We can see what the setup of that new sequence would look like. Definitely check out the release notes if you want more detail into setup and requirements. Now, the next item on our list, also not construction specific, is the ability to now unapply credits more easily. And so this is one that's been highly requested. So we were definitely excited to see this come out. And so this affects our ability to unapply advances, debit memos, negative bills, as well as negative line items applied from one bill to another. And so to see this, we'll come into our posted payments area and we'll now see our $0 transactions as well as the option to unapply items from those transactions. And so selecting unapply will now open up the void payments pop up. And so we can see we can now provide our date and our details surrounding the removal. If we did make a payment at the same time as credit application, we will need to void the payment, at which point our credits applied will automatically be backed out and available to then apply to another bill. We also now have a way to review the actual credits applied a little more easily. So if we come into the payment details, here we'll see we have a new tab called credits applied. And so that's going to be detailing those credits. And we can then drill into those items if we need to. For full details on new versus old behavior, definitely be sure to review those release notes. The next one on our list, and you may have already spotted it, we now have the ability to void all payments from the posted payments page, whereas in the past, the location to void a payment would be dependent on the actual payment type and would require going to our check or bank or credit card registers or for manual payments. And so now we can void all payments from one central location, making that process a lot easier, obviously, for our users. Now, the next item on our list, we know will help a large number of our clients surrounding customer payment application and related discounts. We now have the ability to customize our discount on the fly during payment application when payments don't quite match based on terms and would have required a debit memo or credit memo. And so this makes it much easier for us to handle situations such as rounding errors, missed grace periods, or customers taking a smaller or larger discount than the terms allowed. And so to see this, we can come into our receive payments area. We'll select our customer, amount, payment type, and account. And then as we come in, we'll see that we now have the ability to come into an area called discount to apply here at the invoice. Now, this does require the AR configuration to be set up to allow for these custom discounts, but that can easily be turned on by coming into our configuration area here and then electing to allow for our custom discounts. For our very last non-construction specific item, we have an interesting new reporting tool called Usage Insights within our company application. When we come into the application, we now have insights with pre-built metrics to help analyze and identify trends in active customers and vendors, as well as our user and subscription growth. Sage has said this will be built out and expanded over future quarters, so we're definitely excited to see where this goes. All right, time to jump into our construction specific updates. While this next item was really built for construction and is listed as a construction industry update, this really could be applied more broadly to multiple industries. And that's the ability to convert a single invoice off of multiple source documents. Because in the past, we were essentially forced to have a separate invoice for every source document that we needed to convert off of. And so to do this, we will have to enable the functionality within purchasing, which I've already done. And so I'll jump straight into a quick example. So to see this in action, I'll come into a new subcontract invoice. I'll go ahead and select one of my vendors that I know I have multiple subcontracts for. Now, with that vendor selected, I have two options. So I can come into this convert from an existing transaction hyperlink. What I'll see in this case is all of my subcontracts related to this vendor. And that's given how the transaction definition flow is set up. So I won't see POs here, for example, but I can come in and select which ones to pull in. Now I'll select this one here. And as I come down, we'll see the lines were pulled in, similar to if we were to have done a typical conversion within our list views. But if I come back to the top, we'll see I can pull in another. And with that done, we'll see I now have the lines from both originating documents, as well as a link to that document that we can drill into. Now, the alternative to selecting from above, we can come into our individual lines within the details here and select our source document, which again is filtered by our vendor and transaction definition. And we can view that document from the dropdown if we need to. But once selected, we'll have the ability to select which line we want to pull in. And similar to the previous method, we see that our coding amounts, our coding and amounts pull through for us. Now, another highly requested feature we're really excited to see come out this quarter is the ability to create joint checks without the need for a workaround. With this new feature, we can easily add those joint pays to our bills, and then we can also allocate amounts to both primary and joint pays at the pay bills area. So this will allow for both primary and joint pays to be named on the check. Now to see this, we can jump into one of our AP bills and we'll see we have a new tab titled Joint Payees. So at this screen, we can add our joint payee, at which point we'll see our print as will show both our original vendor assigned as well as that joint payee. Now let's jump into the pay bills area. So there may be occasions where we're not going to actually cut a joint check despite having added that secondary payee. So if we use check as our payment method, our checks will print with the single payee. But if we come into our payment method, we do see we have this joint check option, at which point now we will only see those bills that have been set up with a joint payee. Now, if we want to allocate amounts to individual payees, perhaps we want to cut a certain amount out to our original vendor assigned, and then we want to cut another separate joint check related to that bill for a certain amount. We can come into our details here and make that allocation. And then once we go and we cut and print our checks, we'll see that we have two checks, one for the original vendor, and then we would have our joint check, both for those allocated amounts. Now on to what we think is probably one of the most exciting updates coming out this quarter is our WIP automation tool. So this feature has been making its way through early adopter testing over the past couple of quarters, and as of the release is now generally available. So this feature will provide for automated calculation and posting of our period end over under reporting adjustments. Up until now, we could automate the generation of our WIP, but once produced, we would still need to create and post our period end adjustments and set up our reversal. So with this tool, once we have our forecasted cost to complete entered, the system will automatically calculate and post our period end adjustments along with our reversal. So to come into this and just do a high level review, I'm going to come in first to our WIP project settings. And here, what I'll see is my list of my open projects. I can display that hierarchy if we want to see some of those relationships, but we can then come through and select which jobs it is that we want to include in our WIP schedules. Once we select some of those, we can come into this area here and include as its own line, as part of the root project, or include as part of another project, or exclude. Now, once we've done that and we've added which jobs we want to include in that WIP schedule, we can now come into our WIP management area. We'll hit this plus icon, and what we'll see is this resulting schedule. Now, once that's here, we can come through and we have a number of different options, but the CFO forecast cost at completion and CFO forecasted contract value is really what's going to be driving our forecasted percent complete. At which point Intacct will be using those figures to calculate out our over or under billing. And we would go through and finalize once we're happy with those figures. And again, this would automate that. Now we will suggest running this in parallel with our typical WIP reporting, just to make sure that we're not running into issues there. But we're really excited to see this feature come out and happy to see some streamlining of that entire process. So that wraps up our R3 highlights video. So thanks for watching. As I noted at the beginning, there are many more updates that were pushed out in this quarterly release, but this was really intended to be a little more short form with some of our favorites. If you'd like to review all of the updates in detail, make sure to check out those release notes. Again, and as always, thanks for watching. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to the team here at Sockeye.